Hello, listeners. Been wondering how you can help the show? Probably not. But here are 5 things you can do. 1. Subscribe. Support the show by clicking the subscription link in the show notes. 2. Review on iTunes, on our website, www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com, or on whatever app you listen to. 3. Donate. When you go to our website, click the cute coffee cup icon. Or in the show notes, click the subscription link. 4. Share. Sharing really is caring. Tell your friends and even your enemies to check out the show. 5. Watch. Wait a minute, it's a podcast, not a movie. Actually, it's both. Check the show notes to find out where to watch the documentary. You can also rent it on Prime Video. That's it. Oh, one last thing. Enjoy this episode. Ho, ho, ho! Oh boy. It's been a rough year, but Black Friday is just around the corner. Sure, Thanksgiving is coming first, but with pandemic restrictions, that'll just be you and a TV turkey dinner. The good news? You can go to the Afraid of Nothing online store and buy all sorts of cool merchandise. Just go to aonpodcaststore.com. That's aonpodcaststore.com. You can also show your support by dropping some dinero in the virtual cup at www.buymeacoffee.com/afraidofnothing. While you're at it, buy a book from tonight's guest, Alex Matsuo, of The Spooky Stuff. Check the show notes. Okay, all you wannabe ghost hunters, this show is for you. Listen up for some spooky stuff from tonight's guest, Alex Matsuo. Jingle bell sound effect from freesfx.co.uk.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey.
Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
Alex Matsuo is a paranormal researcher, singer, and author. She is the founder of the Association of Paranormal Study and runs the blog and YouTube channel, The Spooky Stuff. If it's weird, spooky, unusual, scary, macabre, or haunted, Alex wants to write and talk about it. She was recently seen on Travel Channel's Most Terrifying Places in America. In addition, Alex is the host of the podcast Informal Paranormal. Alex has written several books about the paranormal, including The Brave Mortal's Guide to Ghost Hunting, The Haunting of the 10th Avenue Theater, More Than Ghosts, A Guide to Working Residential Cases in the Paranormal Field, and The Haunted Actor. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is a Saturday night. You're usually probably out ghost hunting, so I appreciate you taking the time to visit with me now.
Oh, I'm a little boring. I'm here in my apartment drinking some tea and enjoying the evening.
Probably like most people, since we're getting back in lockdown mode across the country. I have a 91-year-old dad, so Thanksgiving, this is being recorded about the week before Thanksgiving. So there's myself and my sister, my brother-in-law, and my 91-year-old dad, and the dog I'll bring over for Thanksgiving. My kids are with my ex-wife, so everybody is pretty much in boring nowadays, I think.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I've been looking at your website page and your blog posts, and we'll get to the paranormal, but first things first, I think your marketing is just pretty outstanding. I do marketing for financial services by day and totally impressed and jealous. What are like 5 things a person should do to kickstart their brand? Because I think you do a lot of things right on your website. And I just wanted to kind of, if you would give people some inspiration on what they should do to help market themselves.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Actually, I really went through a rebrand this past year, just really honing in on my niche and really just nailing down on who I am in terms of the spooky stuff. Probably my first tip is really nail down who you are. And the other thing you need to nail down is who is your target audience. A lot of times what I see with paranormal investigators that are branching out on social media, you really have to make content that's going to attract your target audience. For anyone that's been on my Instagram for the past 3 years, there's been a dramatic change. It went from photos of my workouts, my cat, work desk photos to, hey, here are some haunted places. Here's a selfie of me in a cemetery. Here's a photo of me on a ghost hunt. Here's a really cool picture of this thing on a location. So really just honing in on my niche and finding out my target audience. Those are 2. And then third one is make content. And a lot of people don't know this, but Facebook and Instagram have an algorithm, meaning that they will show your content to your followers to see how your followers respond to it. And then if your followers respond to it, then the algorithm will think, oh, this is good content. Let's push it out to more people. And that comes with consistency. And this drives me nuts, but a lot of paranormal people are buying their likes for Instagram and Facebook, meaning they're paying a third-party website to generate likes for their pages or followers for their Instagram accounts, but their content does not perform well at all. The engagement is so low. Like, the engagement is really sad. Like, there's a page that has over 200,000 likes on Facebook, but I see like 5 people liking their posts. That's a perfect example. It takes some work, but making content, that's a big one. That's 3. And then 4 is really branding yourself. I mean, you really do have to start creating a public face for yourself. And for me, I really had to figure out who I am. How do I want myself to be seen on a public scope? And the reason why I wanted to brand myself in the first place was so I could sell more books. It's worked, by the way. It's worked. And really figuring out what my public voice was. Granted, if you're on my personal Facebook page, I may share a little bit more of non-paranormal content, but that's my personal Facebook page. You won't see that on my Facebook public-facing page with the spooky stuff or my Instagram account. But just really nailing down my voice and really presenting myself as somebody. I don't want to say it's a character. It's more of an exaggerated version of myself because you also see her in the videos too. And then 5th one. What's a good 5th one? I already talked about being consistent, but seriously, being consistent is key because people will be more attracted to follow you if you show up. They will pay more attention to you if you show up. And luckily in this day and age, you can schedule all of your posts these days. I love it because I get complimented a lot on my consistency and how I'm always posting content. That photo you may have seen yesterday or today, I scheduled it a couple weeks ago. So there's a way to do it and while still maintaining your sanity and your personal life and whatnot.
2 things I noticed that you do as a marketer on your website, which, by the way, we should brand you and say alexmatsuo.com, LEXMATSUO.com. Check it out. The first thing was you offer a free ghost hunters checklist to get people to sign up for your mailing list, which I thought was brilliant. Mm-hmm. And the second, yours is one of the rare sites that has an advertise tab, which like tells people rather than you going after advertisers, mm-hmm. people going to your website and they may be impressed and you have a tab right there if people want to advertise with you. So you tell them how to do it. So I thought those are 2 great things. I think also what you touched on was your kind of persona. You have this like great expressive face and this like really brilliant red hair, right? You kind of do use yourself as a visual spokesperson on a lot of the art that's on your, YouTube videos, mm-hmm. or even maybe the key art on some of your blog posts or programs. So it's really good. And it's kind of framed the same way, but it's always kind of fresh. Mm-hmm. And I think one other thing you do that's really cool, which I noticed because we try to do that more in financial services, you have that number countdown thing, that kind of checklist things, like 10 things to whatever. People like lists, and you do a great job, and you pick some really timely topics. So I know this is paranormal, but I think a lot of people are getting into podcasting, and I think you're a good person to follow for how to do it right. So kudos to you. And I just wanted to spend a couple minutes on that up front.
Thank you.
Cool. Hey, every story has a beginning. So what's yours? How did you get interested in the spooky stuff? And at what age were you all in?
Oh boy, that's a good question. So I grew up in a very conservative Christian household, and I wasn't allowed to have spooky stuff in the house. My mom saw it as evil, linked to the occult and everything. And literally, it was, you don't bring this into the house. But then, of course, when you tell a kid to not do something, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
And really, that came from an experience I had when I was visiting my great grandmother's house in Kentucky. This was the place I went to every summer. It's where my grandmother grew up. So, we'd always go home for her to see her mom and her siblings and everything. It really changed me and it really made me realize, okay, there's something weird going on here. I was scared, but I was also fascinated at the same time. And my great grandmother, my mama, would always tell me all of these spooky stories with the family or with the property. And this is in the boonies of Kentucky. Like we're talking Appalachian lore. I mean, it was spooky stuff that this little California girl was just fascinated with. And it was always like, be quiet, Mama, you're scaring Alex. And I'm sitting here like, shh, Mama's talking. So yeah, but at the same time, like I said, my mom was very much like, no, this is evil. There's no such thing as ghosts. It's all demons. And come to find out, my mom, while she was pregnant with me, apparently was dabbling into the occult. Not really like, we're not talking scary stuff. For her, it must have been terrifying, but she was using like tarot cards, pendulums. And apparently she thought she branded me from the beginning.
That's funny.
And I'm sitting here like, oh, I mean, she passed in 2015, so I never got a chance to tell her this, but I'm just like, oh, Mom, it's okay. It's fine. And I've learned since then, like, no, ghosts are not demons. And I've learned better since, but yeah, but that really shaped my upbringing. And really, it just made me want to know more.
That's great. And at what age were you kind of all in? Because you became, was it probably like 10 years ago or whatever? You really tackled this full time a while ago and have been really hitting it hard and doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So once I got my driver's license when I was 16, I started, sorry, family that's listening to this, I started sneaking out of the house after my mom went to bed, and I used to go to the cemetery, the big, like, old cemetery in San Diego. So that's really when I started doing, like, trying to ghost hunt and confession, emulating what I saw on TV, but we're talking 16-year-old Alex. She didn't know better.
So you weren't drinking at the cemetery. You were just kind of cavorting and trying to do some ghost hunting stuff there?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like you'd have one group of teenagers that are drinking and doing drugs in the cemetery. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here like, are you there, Yankee Jim? Hear yourself, Yankee Jim. and then at the same time being like, okay, don't be scary, Yankee Jim. Like, hear yourself, but don't be scary. I did have a few frightening experiences when I was 18 or 17, and then again when I was 19. And that was enough for me to be like, okay, maybe I don't want to do this. And so I took a break from it in college. After I got my master's degree in 2011, actually, it was the start of grad school. All of my projects had some sort of supernatural twist to them because I got my MA in theater. And my mentor was the one who brought it up to me. He's like, he's British. He's like, you cover the supernatural in almost all of your papers. Have you noticed that? And I'm like, yeah, actually, that's interesting that you point that out. And he's like, well, dive deeper into it because it's really interesting. And I know he was telling me from an academic standpoint, and I'm like, okay, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna explore this more. So I really started diving into like lore, like with witches and the supernatural, and Shakespeare's a great source of that, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. And I actually wrote part of my thesis on that. And then that's what made me looking into going back into it. And so I contacted a few teams, local teams, and I was transparent. I just said, hey, I think this might be something I'm interested in, but I don't want to like dive in with a full commitment with a team. Would it be okay if I shadowed you for a few ghost hunts, or if I go to some of your meetups? Is it okay if I hang out? And they were all cool. They're like, yeah, sure. So that's where I started, probably 2010-ish. And then after I graduated in 2011, a few months later, I started my own team. So
wow, that's quick. Do you mind going back to that terrifying stuff that happened when you were 18? Are you comfortable talking about one or two episodes that happened, or?
yeah, I can.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was about 17, 18 years old, it was senior year. it's kind of that year's a blur because there was a lot of changes happening in my life. But yeah, there was something weird in my house, and my house was built in the 50s, and my grandparents lived there. They lived there until they died. Neither of them died in the house though. But my mom was also very spiritual. I honestly, I this is going to sound really bizarre, but I decided to homeschool my senior year of high school so that I could join a Christian mime drama team.
Huh.
It sounds weird, but it was the coolest thing I had ever seen.
Wow.
And I was like, I want to be a part of that. And then I realized after I joined, they were a super spiritual religious group. I couldn't date, you could only court. Very much girls had to dress a certain way, guys had to dress a certain way. One of the members of our drama team like kissed a boy and she had to publicly apologize to us, and a lot of prayer over scripture. I mean, some of it was borderline Pentecostal too, because they were speaking in tongues and everything. So there's a lot of spiritual stuff happening within the group. And I don't know if that, I mean, I was committed to it, but I'm not sure how much I really believed in it. And I don't know if I attracted something. My mom was very hardcore into it. Like, she believed in it to the point where when we were fighting, teenage daughter fighting with her mom,
Yeah.
it happens. But there'd be times my mom would look at me and say, "Get out of her, Satan."
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm sitting here, I'm trying not to laugh. And their argument was, well, you're laughing when she's calling out Satan. There must be something going on. And I'm sitting here like, no, I'm laughing because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I got to tell you, you're the second person when I interviewed that mentioned something like this, because Lisa Williams, who's one of the top people on remote
Mhm.
viewing, I did an episode with her, and she talked about kind of at a younger age where she went down something kind of similar, and then she came back to the supernatural. So yeah, it's your path is kind of, some other people have had some similar things where it brought them to the paranormal.
Yeah, it's interesting, but and I don't know if maybe that whole, I mean, because it was a form of spiritual warfare. So I don't know if I attracted something or what, but it was dark. I mean, it was really dark, and it was a woman. And I'm skeptical about sleep paralysis. I always have been since I was a kid because I had sleeping issues. So I knew what it was, but my incidents didn't happen when I was sleeping. It was a woman dressed in black and black skin, and I'm not talking African American. I'm talking her skin was black,
Wow.
like almost like she was painted black. And
What
she
were the
had
eyes? Were the eyes red or
gold,
something? Gold.
gold. Like she had a
Wow.
gold. She had a gold outline to her too, so it was like this black and gold thing. And I hate to say what she looked like now because people are like, oh, The Conjuring. She looked like a nun. She looked
Yeah.
like a nun,
Wow.
and it was the weirdest thing. But she was a thing in my house for a while, and we had people praying in different rooms of the house, and eventually she kind of just went away.
Did they see anybody else in your family notice it too, or did they just kind of trust you that it was happening? Did anyone else witness anything happening to you, or was it just you and they were trying to help you?
My mom was the first one who actually noticed it. And it was just me and my mom living in this house.
Okay.
And I never told her about it because I didn't want her to go like
Okay.
crazy Christian on
Yeah.
me. Because, like I said, I wasn't really sure what I believed in at the time. And I mean, I'm glad I told her because we did get people coming in and praying. And I don't know if the prayers helped or what, but I also kind of wonder if this woman was like a manifestation of that tension between me and my mom spiritually.
That's interesting you say, because a lot of people, I've heard other people mention about that they manifest. There's a guy named Sam Baltrusis that's an author out here. He was on the show as well.
I love Sam.
Yeah, Sam's a great guy.
Yeah.
I think he feels like he's manifested spirits. Like there was the man of, I can't say the Hat Man, I guess, because it's copyrighted, but the Man in the Hat or something. He thought he might have manifested some stuff and some experience. So yeah, that's interesting. The whole idea of manifesting, bringing ghosts upon yourself.
Yeah, it was interesting. And I mean, and I always I had one other spooky incident in that house before that, and it was actually in the room that would become my bedroom, but something tapped me on the head while I was laying then it was a guest bed. I was just laying down on the
Wow.
guest bed looking up at the ceiling, and something smacked me on the forehead. Yeah, so I don't know if it was the same thing or just, I don't know.
I want to ask you a couple questions actually before going to your ghost hunting stuff. One question I have, which is, why do ghosts typically, why are they only like about 100 years or old or so? How come we don't run into like medieval ghosts? Like the Black Plague was a pretty bad time. It seems like ghosts may be 100 years or so old, but anything older than that is like a demon or something. Do you find that in ghost hunting, that ghosts typically aren't much more than 100 years old?
I personally have not, but it's interesting because there's a lot of people online that believe this. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I don't really see a lot of data supporting that. But also, I'm trying to remember who was it. Oh, Rob Guttrow. He did a bunch of investigations.
Oh, he's awesome.
Yeah. He did a bunch of investigations in England. Oh gosh, it was several years ago. But he was running into spirits from like the Elizabethan era. I had something similar when I was studying abroad in Oxford. And the college I was staying at was hundreds of years old. I mean, the room below my dorm hosted Elizabeth I for tea. Like old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a spirit there. He wasn't active or scary, but more of like the watchful eye. I was also one of the few females on that floor. So I don't know if it was just him watching out for me or, what's going on, but he was dressed in an Elizabethan era soldier's uniform. And he would always just kind of stand by the window. I would always see him, like I would always see his silhouette. Like if I came home late, it almost felt like the vibe of dad sitting in the living room waiting for you to come home
Yeah.
when you were breaking curfew. And I mean, that's more than 100 years old. And just down the road from my dorm, there's this tower that's 2,000 years old that's still standing. And I find it interesting because I don't know how often we are actually looking for ghosts that are older than that, especially here in the US. I mean,
Yeah.
I still run into possible spirits from the Revolutionary War era.
Okay, so I guess you're right. Yeah, when you talk about Gettysburg, I have to tell you, Rob Guttrow was on my show too. He connects with pets, people who lose pets. He helps connect people with them.
Yep.
And he is by far my most popular, like by a 2-to-1 ratio. He was my first episode to get, over 1,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, people love their pets. So that's a whole thing he does on the side. He's a meteorologist during the day. People don't really know. He's a really smart guy. He's written a ton of books. He had mentioned that. He had mentioned me, like he brought his partner with him to the UK. And I think he told about that story on the podcast. And I think his partner, I forget his partner's name was that was the first time he kind of had like a paranormal experience or was kind of, getting vibes on the paranormal. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I saw on your Facebook page today, once in a while you post questions. There was another great one too. It says, is there such a thing as a positive haunting? Most people think of hauntings as a negative connotation. Have you come across in your investigations positive hauntings that are really warm, wonderful things?
Yeah, there are a few places, and I'll be honest, I have a positive haunting in my apartment.
Really?
I don't know much about him. I'm assuming it's a him, but we call him Frank, Frank the kitchen ghost. And it's funny because we have to keep our breakfast bar clean because if we don't, he will actually slide stuff off of our breakfast bar. Like my boyfriend left a bottle of taco sauce on the bar a couple weeks ago, and we literally watched the bottle of taco sauce slide from one edge of the bar, slide to the opposite side, and slide completely off. Literally, it depends on the perception of the person too. Somebody may look at that and think it's terrifying.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, sorry, Frank, we'll keep the bar clean.
Did you pick Frank up from one of your investigations, do you think? Did he follow you home or how did he end up in your apartment?
I have no idea, actually. He just sort of appeared maybe a year after my mom died. And I used to get a lot of transient spirits in my apartment, especially right before a case. But after my mom died, the place became sterilized. Like, she wasn't letting anybody in, I don't think. And even my psychic medium friend, she came to my apartment before my mom died, and she was telling me, oh yeah, you got this going on, this and that going on, which again, par for the course, it happens. But then she came over like maybe 2 months after my mom died, and she's like, what did you do to the place? There's nothing here. So Frank, I want to say came in about maybe 5-ish years ago. He may have even come with my boyfriend. I kind of wonder sometimes because we didn't really notice. I didn't notice Frank until after my boyfriend moved in.
Well, your boyfriend should know by now not to leave stuff out if Frank came with me. This is probably a good spot to talk about your latest book. I think it's your latest book, The Brave Mortal's Guide to Ghost Hunting, which it's brilliant. It's essentially a primer for people who want to become ghost hunters,
Yeah.
and you take them through the steps from what you learned so they don't trip over themselves, and you actually even lead them down to what they should do if they actually encounter a spirit. So
hmm
do you want to talk about why you wrote it and some key sections in it that you think are pretty cool that people should pay attention to?
Yeah, definitely. So I wrote the book mainly because I was always being asked, like, well, how do I get started in ghost hunting? Where do I begin? And that's probably still one of my most popular questions. And since the book came out, I'm like, well, check out my book. And a lot of people don't know where to start. They may start on social media, but let's be honest, we don't get great advice on social media most of the time. It's kind of hard. And it's hard to differentiate between who knows what they're doing and who doesn't know what they're doing, which makes things a little tricky. That's mainly why I wrote the book, was just so that there was a resource for people and I had something down on paper. I kind of got the idea of the book title between The Haunted Mansion, Welcome Foolish Mortals, and then The Handbook for the Recently Deceased from Beetlejuice.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So,
That's excellent.
yeah. So that's where the title kind of gained inspiration from. And one of my friends actually came up with it because she's better at coming up with book titles than I am. And yeah, so key parts of that in that book, I would say, is definitely the section about historical research. I approach historical research from a genealogical standpoint. So I use a lot of genealogy in my research because that gives me context. I find more context than other things. What to do when you encounter a spirit. There's always this whole thing about what a ghost is, how to set up your investigation. And then when you get the activity, I've noticed with investigators, the world kind of falls apart, meaning stop everything. Oh my gosh, did you see that? Holy cow, oh, that's awesome. And meanwhile, you have this spirit that is engaging with you and they're sitting there like, what the heck? They're not talking to me anymore. Or they start to feel like fearful and they start to freak out. And again, the ghost might not be trying to do that. They're just like, hey, you asked me questions. I'm responding. What's going on?
I probably am one of the people that drive me up the wall when I go to a place and do EVPs. You find yourself doing the stupid stuff when you're ghost hunting because you don't know what else to ask. It's like, hello, is there a ghost here? Will you talk to me? Whatever. We ask the same question. Will you, ring that doorbell or open that window or close that door? I mean, is there certain things that drive you up the wall that people do for ghost hunting? And should they really talk to ghosts differently than the way we kind of see on TV and the way most people's first attempt is to do it? Because it's kind of like awkward dating when people walk into a haunted house and try to encounter a ghost.
I run into this a lot. So the question that that really drives me up the wall is, do you know that you're dead? So you either have the spirit that's like, duh, or you have the spirit like, I'm dead. What? I'm dead. So I'm not a big fan of that, but you bring up a great point. I've noticed that there's this thing that happens with ghost hunting where, oh, I'm talking to my friend and we're talking to my team members and having this great time. And then, spirit, is there anybody here?
Yeah.
It's like a switching of gears, and ghosts are people too. Spirits are people too. I know the terminology is kind of all over the place in this community, so I'll use both. They're people too, but even if they're not people and we're talking to an elemental, I mean, we should still talk to them with respect and level with them. And meaning, I'm not saying say things like, dude, bro, you see this TikTok? But, talk to them like people. I mean, because they are people, they are a person or thing to be addressed. I find that the humanity of ghosts decreases once they become ghosts or once they are a haunting. We tend to not see them as people per se, but as like this other thing that we don't know about, which is true. But I feel like asking just the same questions over and over again, or knock on that door, or knock twice for yes. Is there anybody? I mean, I don't really fault anyone for saying, "Is there anybody here with us?" Because that's a fair question.
Yeah.
And actually, a few teams do this. Shay McClellan from the Q Files podcast does this with his is a, I don't remember his official team name, but he was on a YouTube series called Queer Paranormal. And there's something to be said about sharing your story.
Yeah.
And we do this when we start off our investigations. Not only do we introduce ourselves, but we also talk about our life stories. I mean, obviously, a little more concise and succinct. It's like, in 1986, I did this. It's more of, hey, my name's Alex. Especially if I'm in hospitals and stuff, I'll say, hey, I'm diabetic. And, I'll just talk about me. And we find that it creates, I dare say, a safe space for ghosts to come forward, because then we have a ghost that says, hey, I'm like you, or hey, I was a doctor, I can help you, type of thing. It just kind of creates this bridge of understanding, because we're always asking the ghosts for their story. We always want to know more about them, or we're asking questions in a way to get a reaction from them, when I think they're just as curious about us as we are about them.
I think our mutual friend Sam Baltrusis is very good about that. He will kind of introduce himself, but his questions are about helping them and try to help them in their situation. So I think that's spot on.
Yeah, and it's really, and for me, and that's what puts the humanity back into ghost hunting, or putting empathy into ghost hunting too, because yeah, we tend to have this barrier between like the ghost hunter and the ghost, and I think there can be a bridge of understanding where we bring it all together. And I mean, and I think that's a lot of the reasons why we do get EVPs when we're just having side talk amongst ourselves. They want to participate in that. Like, they want to talk about pizza with us. They want to talk about their kids too when we're talking about our kids. So it's just finding that common ground.
Nowadays, if I understand correctly, I think a lot of your investigations are residential, right? So
Mhm.
does your Brave Mortals Guide to Ghost Hunting, does it cover that, or does it cover mostly just going to well-known haunted places? Or does it cover, when you're invited to a residential place and how you should handle that situation? Because those can be some of the most dangerous encounters.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I do brush on residential cases a bit. I take a deeper dive in more than ghosts. But yeah, so in Brave Mortal's Guide to Ghost Hunting, I do cover residential cases. I also cover how to have an investigation when you're going on a public tour, or you're going on a walking tour with like a company and stuff. But yeah, residential cases can be really tricky, not just like with the liability aspect of it, but also with the haunting, because I'll be honest, I don't think clients are always 100% honest with teams with their contribution to the haunting,
Yeah.
because we've been finding this a lot more, especially as of late, and when we're trying to suggest solutions and things that the client needs to do to de-escalate the haunting, and then the next week they're calling us saying, things are flying across the room and they have scratches, and then we're like, well, did you do what we told you to do? No, but I decided to do this instead. Well, that's why the activity's worse.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. We should pause there and just tell people where to get your books. I mean, probably at your website, but is it on Amazon, or what's the best place to get the two you mentioned were the Brave Mortals Guide to Ghost Hunting. The other one was More Than Ghost, a guide to working residential cases in the paranormal field. And I think we're going to talk about next theater, because you have a theater background and you did a book called The Haunting of the 10th Avenue Theater. So
mhm.
where can they get your books, just as a quick sidebar?
Yeah, you can go to my website, alexmatsuo.com. I have a little page for each book, and you can also find them on Amazon too.
Excellent. Now, in college you did theater,
Mhm.
and there's kind of a connection. A lot of places, a lot of theaters are haunted. So there's kind of a connection between theater and ghost hunting. Tell us about the book you wrote, The Haunting of the 10th Avenue Theater.
Yeah, so this theater is a theater in San Diego. When I was living there, I lived in San Diego for most of my life, and I did some work in the 10th Avenue Theater as an actor and as a director. And we were starting to notice like all these weird things happening. And then my tech friends would pull me aside. And this was like soon after I started my team. They're like, hey, this weird thing happened at the 10th. I want to tell you about it. And then I had my own experience at the 10th Avenue Theater. A ghost actually worked my lights for me, which was nice.
Wow. Alex, how old is that theater? Is it vintage or is it relatively new?
The theater itself didn't start till like the 2000s, but the building was built in 1924, 1925, so
Okay.
early 1920s,
Yeah.
right when San Diego was being developed. So it was old-ish, and it was right next door to the oldest Baptist church in San Diego. So that there was some history there. And yeah, this place is just a really positive, this is another place where it's a positive haunting. There is one ghost there that's a little negative, but it's not necessarily him terrorizing people. He just met a very bad end to his life, and he kind of just sulks in the dressing room on the second floor. That's just, you don't bug him and it's fine.
Probably the ghost of a critic, not an actor anyways. They tend to be a little more somber.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I talked to the owner, and this was after I started my team, and I just said, "Hey, would it be possible to ghost hunt here maybe sometime?" And he basically handed me the key and said, "Yeah, go for it. Just don't be in here while there's a show and have fun." So, I had unlimited access to this theater for about 2 years.
Wow. 2 years. Excellent. And just tell us
Yeah.
maybe a couple of the main ghosts that you found there.
Yeah. So there's Missy. She was alive when the theater was basically the chapel to the church. It was also used as offices and recreational activities for the youth groups and, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. She died in the theater. She was running down the stairs and lost her footing and basically fell down the stairs and died. There's our sulking ghost. He actually committed suicide in the theater back when it was a church. He was actually the pastor that was chasing Missy down the stairs, and he was so overridden with guilt that he ended up committing suicide.
Wow.
And then there's another one named Carol. She's our OCD ghost. I'm not for provoking, but there's different levels of provoking, and this is like lowest level provoking. She hates clutter and hates mess. So the way that we get her to talk, and she haunts the bathrooms on the 4th floor. The way we get her to talk is we mess up the bathrooms. We like put toilet paper in the toilet but don't flush. We'll like leave the sinks on and stuff. And
Sound like my kids. God, you should get your ghost from your apartment, Frank and her together. That would be a great couple, actually.
I know, right? I know, right? Yeah, so those are the 3 main ones. There's another one. There's a few others around the area that we haven't identified, but they're there. They've made their presence known.
So you've moved from San Diego to, is it North Carolina? Is
Yep.
that where you've moved? Okay. So how's North Carolina for being a haunted venue? Have you found just a ton of cases out there, residential cases? And are there any landmarks in North Carolina that you really recommend for people to check out?
It's interesting because I have been asked like which side of the country's more haunted, and honestly, they're both equally as haunted. The East Coast has a bit of a different thing because we have the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, but in California we have Native Americans. We had the Spaniards coming in, bringing Spanish flu to the natives, and there's a lot of mass graves in California. So it's just different. It's a different kind of haunting. In North Carolina, there's a bunch of really cool haunted nuggets in the state. There's the Trivett Clinic in Hamptonville, North Carolina. Really great place, very accessible. The USS North Carolina is a great one too. That's in Wilmington. And there's a few places in Asheville that are haunted, although the entire town of Asheville seems to be haunted. Anytime you look up haunted places in Asheville, it's like a list of like 50 places. And I'm like, okay, so the city.
Are people really receptive? Are they kind of embarrassed when they call you up and say, I have a residential ghost, or are people very open about it?
They're pretty cool about it, actually. I'm still met with you're going to think I'm crazy, or, please don't think I'm weird. And I'm like, no, it's fine. Just tell me about it.
You probably have learned a great technique for not just introducing yourselves to ghosts, but introducing yourselves to homeowners who are nervous about that sort of thing. Have you ever had such a bad experience that you almost walked away in the past 10 years? I ask this because I know people who have been mediums or EVP experts, and they've done it for a while. And then there was someone's going to be in the show in a couple episodes. She was just overwhelmed. She just couldn't deal with it anymore. And then there's a guy I know that was in my film. There's an EVP expert that he went through a bunch of stuff and then he just kind of stopped doing it. Have you ever been close to that?
Not by the spirits, actually dealing with the living.
Yeah. That's funny. A lot of people do say that.
Yeah. I prefer the dead.
Yeah. That you're not the first person. That's funny. I was looking at you do a great job on your blog, and you've just some really compelling posts. One that you did recently was called 15 Things Paranormal Investigators Should Stop Making a Big Deal About.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it could be your most controversial post to date. Why did you say that?
Well, because I feel like a lot of these points were going to strike a nerve with people. And in this community, I love the paranormal community, but man, we have a long way to go, especially with the whole, when people disagree with you, people take it as an attack. And it's like, no, I make these points because I care about the community and I wanted to keep going and I wanted to keep progressing. And I feel like we're kind of stuck right now in the community. And yeah, that's a big reason why I wrote the blog.
Yeah, you covered 15 things. I'm just going to touch on a couple if you don't mind and just
Yeah.
give it a quick soundbite. So the first one you said was ego.
Mm. Yes, there's a lot of ego in this field, and I'm not sure what it is. It's a very compelling study to look at. And actually, one of my friends, Dylan Jones, he's getting his PhD from a college in the UK, technically in the paranormal, but it's the paranormal and media studies. So he's looking at looking at it from a sociological and anthropological and psychological perspective. So it is a legit PhD program. He just chose his studies on the paranormal and media. And it's interesting because him and I just recently had a conversation, but we were talking about how there are ghost hunters on LinkedIn now.
Really?
And
Wow.
that's not
That's
what LinkedIn's for.
yeah, yeah. You,
It's not what LinkedIn's for. And I'm very hesitant to accept any LinkedIn connection requests from the paranormal world that find me because my LinkedIn page has nothing to do with the paranormal. It's my corporate identity,
yep.
which I need that because I need a job and benefits and everything and a career to support what I love. But ego is a very big thing. And I think it really muddies people's perceptions of how they function in the paranormal, but also how they interact with each other. I mean, I keep seeing the same type of team photos like in the cemetery or in the haunted forest with people like crossing their arms, wearing all black, wearing Ed Hardy, and really just and this is going to sound terrible of me, but when people are announcing like their new team members and they make these really tacky images, but basically trying to sell themselves as like these paranormal stars, I'm sitting here like, why should I care about this? Right? Especially when right now, like ego is very much based on, oh, I have like 10,000 followers on
Yeah.
Facebook and I have 5,000 followers on Instagram and follow me. Let's do follow for follow, which is BS, by the way. And this is a marketer. Follow for follow, like for like is BS.
Yeah, or watch my episode and I'll watch yours. Yeah, I was going to mention that because related to ego or two others you had was
Mhm.
social media following and
Yeah.
getting on a TV show.
And it's really, and anytime there's any sort of criticism, it's like you insulted these people's mothers. Like you're just closed-minded, and it's like, no. Uh, Criticism is a thing, and I was raised in the entertainment business. I was one of those child actors, teen actors. I've been in some form of acting and performing my entire life. It was ingrained in my brain from day one. There's always somebody better than you. You are replaceable and you need to act right, or we can just find someone else to do the work for us. And rejection's a thing. You're not going to be right for everybody. Not everyone's going to like you. That's okay. But you need to get used to rejection. And I don't know if people in the paranormal had that when they were growing up. It just the idea of someone may not like me or I may not mesh with someone that I want to mesh with. I mean, it's just like dating, but the same thing. If you get rejected by a potential suitor, I mean, there's different ways to handle it. And some people don't handle that well. And it's the same thing with ego in the paranormal,
Yeah.
especially when it's, oh, I've been doing this for 20 years. And, just things like that to kind of override anyone's experience or opinion. It's just really interesting. It's fascinating, honestly.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And look, I'm on the outside looking in. I did a documentary which got me connected to some people, and then I started doing a podcast which helped. But I'm not a real heavy go and ghost investor type of guy. One of the other ones I thought was pretty funny you mentioned was acronyms, which is kind of everybody tries to be cute with acronyms. You want to talk a little bit about that? Why
Oh
that's
my
such
gosh,
a big deal?
acronyms drive me crazy. Especially it's like, oh, we have to figure out a way to have ghost in our name. And I'm just like, no, just say what you're doing. It's fine. It's like trying to be clever and it was cool back in like the early 2000s, but
Yeah, your association is the Association of Paranormal Study. You could call it the Ghosts Association Studying Paranormal. You'd have GASP.
yeah.
You'd have a very cool acronym if you did that. If you were trying really hard. So that's totally true. You mentioned another one called apps. There are a lot of bad apps out there, but are there any apps that you like that are out there that you might recommend people try out?
I'll be honest, I have not had a great experience with any app, but people swear by Echovox. I'm still experimenting with it, so I'm not like going to give an opinion on it really. And I literally have people on like in the Echovox group helping me with it because I'm like, I'm not hearing what you're hearing. I must be doing something wrong. Because like I said, I have people swearing by Echovox. And
Isn't it like you have to like tune a bunch of different things? It's kind of complicated,
it
right? You have
is.
to like you could tune a bunch of different things, and there's another one called, is there one called like Necromancer or something? I'm trying to
Yes,
think.
that one too. And there's another one called Phasmabox, but that one's a little easier for me, and you just pull it up on your computer. But it's ITC, it's all ITC stuff. And what I have an issue with Echovox is it does record your voice and kind of spout it back at you.
Oh, right.
And I'm
Okay.
not sure what the reasoning is behind it, but apparently there is a reason behind the madness. So, but yeah, I literally have people like helping me with it because I say, what are your settings? Because I don't know what the frick I'm doing here.
Yeah, Echo Vox, it just seemed like too much work. I mean, probably because I was looking at it late at night, maybe, but Necromancer's a little bit easier. Two more things you mentioned out of the 15. One was demons. Why should people not make a big deal out of demons?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a good one. So, what's interesting with demons is I think it's been so sensationalized by TV, but also, I mean, I grew up in a Southern Baptist household where those aren't spirits of your loved ones, they're demons. And I feel like anytime people are like feeling fearful or scared, they immediately go to demons. And I've worked on what could have very well potentially been demonic cases, never confirmed, but they just feel different, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's just a different feeling with it. That's the only way I can describe it. But also, when I do research on demons and, well, quote unquote demons, and then I look up like their names and everything, I'll research a particular demon, I'll find their name, but then I see in a different context, they were a god or a goddess. So, what's a demon to one group of people is a deity to another group of people that's not associated with ritualistic sacrifice or anything. It was like, oh, they're the god of spring or they're the god of harvest. But on the other side, there are people who say this person's a demon or this deity is a demon. So, I think it also depends on context. And that's what drives me crazy about the whole demon trend.
Yeah, one person's demon is another person's deity. Is there any truth that if you find out their name, you kind of have them? Like, oh, your name's Jerry. Jerry, get out, or does it matter if you know their name?
I don't think it matters. It's very anytime I hear and talk about this, I always think of Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah.
I don't think so. But there's also a lot of power in a name too.
Yeah.
So
one other thing you mentioned, there are a bunch. I recommend people read the article on your website. Ouija boards, because I just recently did a show on that. Ouija boards. Why should people not make a big deal about Ouija boards?
So, in my opinion, which apparently has become a very controversial opinion, I don't think they're any different than ghost hunting. They're no different than an EVP session. Some blowback that I've gotten is, well, you're using your body to investigate or to use it. Okay, people use their body to investigate too. They say you can touch me, or they say, oh, I think I'm feeling something. You're using your body on an investigation. And then someone's like, well, with a Ouija board, you don't know what you're inviting in. We don't know what we're inviting in a ghost hunt either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. You say that, and I'm thinking like, I just bought an Ouija board actually about a week ago. But spirit boxes, I mean, same thing, right? You're bringing, you're talking and you're conjuring entities to talk to you, but you don't throw out your ITC spirit box, your SB7 or whatever after a session, but you will think about getting rid of your Ouija board if you think it's cursed. But you're right, it's just kind of a way to contact people. But why is it the board that has to be thrown out?
Yeah, and honestly, we don't even know how, if spirits exist and everything, because I say this very cautiously, we don't even know how they use a Ouija board, because so many people are convinced you use a Ouija board because a spirit possesses you. And I'm like, okay, where's your proof of that? What if the spirit's just moving the planchette with you? I mean, come on. So I think, and also before The Exorcist came out movie theaters, the Ouija board had a really positive reputation. So I blame William Peter Blatty. Not really, but.
Yeah, son of a gun. Yeah, do you mind me asking? I was going to ask, have you had any contact with your mom since she's passed?
I have a few times. First time it was right after she died. First time was when I was going through her house and all of the electronics in the house started to go nuts. And they were unplugged, by the way,
Really?
because we were going through stuff like throwing things out and everything. And my mom was a big technology person. the radio in her kitchen kept going off and it was unplugged. Um, so that was weird. The other time was 2017. She came out in Gettysburg, of all places. We were doing a spirit box session and we hear this male voice say my name. And anytime something says my name, I'm like, oh crap. Like,
Yeah.
what did I do? But yeah, we hear this male voice say Alex, and I'm like, oh, I'm right here. What do you need? And then clear as day, my mom's voice comes through and says, hi, honey.
Wow.
And I
How did that
lost
make you
it.
feel? Oh, I was
Oh,
gonna say, yeah,
I
yeah, oh,
lost
yeah,
it. I
yeah,
lost it.
yeah.
I started crying. I couldn't even speak. So my team member had to take over with the questioning because I'm sitting here like I can't talk right now.
Yeah, I just felt it right now when you said it. My stomach dropped a little. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was brief. I mean, it was very much like, I miss you. I love you. And then we kind of realized on the drive back to the hotel that it was after midnight when this happened and it was Mother's Day.
Oh,
So
wow. That's
it was,
awesome.
it was Mother's Day. Yeah. This most recent time she came through, I was using a Ouija board on Halloween, which was also the same night as a full moon. So
Yeah.
according to some people, Hellmouth should have opened up and swallowed me.
It was a full moon this Halloween. Was it this year that it happened or?
Yep.
Okay.
It was this year.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And I was actually using it with my boyfriend and we were getting something and it was like, asking, hey, is there anybody here right now that would like to talk to us? And I said, what's your name? Can you spell out your name? And it started to spell Jon. John's a very big name in my family. So I'm like, okay, so this could be my grandpa or it could be my mom. And then it went to D and I'm like, okay. Because my mom's name was Jonda. And I was like, okay, hey mom, this time I did not lose it. And,
Yeah.
but then still, when the moment was there, I'm like, I don't know what to ask you right now. I don't know what to say. It was just frustrating
Isn't
because
that
you think of all
crazy?
these things you want to ask, like your loved one, if you ever see them again. But I guess it was also me just wanting to enjoy the company.
Yeah.
But then as I'm using the Ouija board with my boyfriend, I'm like, okay, what do you think of Chris? And my boyfriend's like, what?
He's pushing it to yes or whatever.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, and then it started to spell GOTAGOODONE. Got a good one.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, which
That's great.
was something, and that was something my mom said when she was alive, like, oh, got a good one. So I was like, all right, cool. But yeah,
That is great.
that was the last time.
That's a great story. If you don't mind right now, I'd like to do a little bit of word association or multiple words. I'll throw out a couple paranormal terms, and I just kind of want to get your reaction to it, all right?
Okay.
First one is scrying, like in Black Mirrors.
Very mysterious. I want to know more.
Black-eyed kids.
No, thank you.
Exorcism.
Dramatic.
Ouija boards.
Not as bad as you think.
I just saw this online a little while ago. Just curious what you think about it since you have a music background. Paul McCartney is dead hoax.
Another one?
No, the one from Sgt. Pepper's. Did you ever take any credence in that, or did you ever follow that at all?
It's interesting. Granted, it could have happened. I don't know. The entertainment business has done some shady things over the years.
Yeah,
so
it is a business.
I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I think some of the thought was, people may background for the listeners. I think it was around 1966. He was in a car accident. People thought maybe he died, and there was actually around that time before that they did a kind of Paul McCartney lookalike, a guy from Canada. I thought his name was Billy Shears. The rumor was that the music label was afraid if people found out he was dead, it would cause mass suicides and also hurt the brand. So they took this Billy Shears guy, gave him a facelift, and had him take Paul McCartney's place. And if you look at the album covers, most notably Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and a couple others, there's a whole bunch of like things that look like they're clues. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, back to paranormal. Mirrors in your bedroom.
I have a big mirror in my bedroom, and it's fine.
Okay. Nope, you don't think it's a portal or anything like that. Okay.
Nah.
UFOs.
I want to know more, but maybe no thank you.
Okay. And that's connected to alien abductions.
No thank you, but if you've had one, I want to talk to you.
Spirit boxes.
Interesting, but questionable.
Dibbit boxes.
I'm not sure about that one.
Haunted dolls on eBay.
Just as high maintenance as having a real child. No thanks.
Death.
I want to be okay with it, but it still freaks me out.
Afterlife.
I hope it's real.
All right, me too. Okay. Hey, look, Black Friday is coming. What are 5 things people should buy for the paranormal enthusiasts in their family?
Ooh, well, definitely my book.
There you go. I'm glad you said that. I was hoping you. All right, well, then plug it again. Say the title and where they should get it.
Yeah, The Brave Mortal's Guide for Ghost Hunting. You can find it on Amazon, on my website at alexmatsuo.com. It's the perfect gift for your aspiring ghost hunter. Let's see, other things for Black Friday. I actually have a list on my website. It's I think it's 12 cool tech items for your paranormal investigation, something like that.
Yep.
And I list out different pieces of equipment you can get, and it's leveled out from cheapest to most expensive. So, get a K2 meter, or maybe a spirit box, maybe a book, maybe even like a ghost mug or a t-shirt, something to really help your person embrace their paranormal side.
And we should probably say that they should always support their favorite person who's a blogger or a YouTube person, or buy merch from them, help support the people that you listen to.
Yep.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. So you tell us again where we can follow you, all the different places. And 2020 has been a tough year. Is there anything you have coming out or that you're working on for 2021 that you want to tease?
Yeah, I'm working on another book right now. It's actually a fiction book this time around. So it's going to be hopefully coming out in 2021. I'm actually going to shop it around with some publishers first, see if there's any small press interested in it. But yeah, that's basically it right now. On social media, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok at The Spooky Stuff. Just type in The Spooky Stuff and I'll pop up. My website is alexmatsuo.com. You can find me on YouTube at The Spooky Stuff with Alex Matsuo.
Now, what if someone thinks they have a residential haunting, but they're not in North Carolina? They reached out and said, here's my situation. Do you know people that you might connect them with, or what would you recommend?
I would say still contact me, because I can maybe give some advice over the distance. But granted, keep in mind, I'm not there in person, so it may not be good advice. I'm very transparent about that. There's also a website called paranormalsocieties.com. It is actually a paranormal team database that you can use to search by state and city. So you can see what teams are nearby in your city, and you can contact them and get some help.
Well, that's excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Alex. Appreciate it. And keep on doing the spooky stuff.
Thanks so much for having me on.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared.
Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming episode, and the world will know how swell you are.